my heartfelt condolences for the loss of my beloved mother-in-law. As I was preparing to attend the funeral, my phone suddenly rang. It was my husband, urgently instructing me.
Do not come to the funeral home. Go back to your parents' home immediately.
Confused, I followed his instructions and returned home. Later, my husband, who had joined us, revealed the existence of my estranged and conniving sister-in-law, Sophia. She callously asked about the inheritance, aiming to exploit my late mother-in-law's assets. Determined to protect my mother-in-law's honor, I resolved to confront Sophia. Our intense verbal battle ultimately led to her confinement behind cold, dark bars. I am Olivia Smith, a perfectly ordinary housewife. I am happily married to my husband, Michael, who works as a company employee. By the way, it seems that many women struggle with how to interact with their husband's relatives after marriage. Particularly, there are rumors of bitter conflicts between daughters-in-law and mothers-in-law. I, too, used to hold such a murky image. However, fortunately, I've been able to maintain a harmonious married life in that regard. Specifically, I share a close bond with my mother-in-law, Nancy. For instance,
Olivia, how does this cardigan look? I knitted it, thinking it would suit you.
Me? Thank you. The color is adorable, and you're quite skilled at knitting.
I'm glad you like it. The weather is getting colder, so take care of your health.
Certainly. Oh, by the way, would you be willing to teach me knitting sometime? And that's how it goes. Nancy's smile always radiates warmth and kindness. I've relied on her assistance countless times, and she has even provided financial support. I love my gentle mother-in-law, considering her like a second mother. However,
Olivia, it seems that Mom passed away at the hospital.
the news of Nancy's passing arrived just the other day. I was shocked by her death and couldn't eat for a while. But this is a reality I must accept. Reflecting on it, Nancy had been battling terminal cancer for several years, enduring continuous chemotherapy treatments. Her struggle must have been incredibly difficult. Whenever I visited her, she would greet me with a smile. I'm sure she pushed herself to appear strong and not burden us with worry. For her sake, I can't keep crying forever. Let's bid her farewell with at least a smile. With that thought in mind, I prepared to attend my mother-in-law's funeral at my in-laws' home. At that moment, my smartphone, which was placed on the table, began to ring. Curious, I glanced at the screen, and there it was, the caller ID displaying my in-laws' number. Screen. Perhaps my husband, who had gone ahead for the funeral preparations, forgot something. I picked up the phone with a light-hearted feeling. However,
Olivia, is that you? Do not come to the funeral home. Go back to your parents' home immediately.
his urgent voice echoed from the phone. What? Go back to my parents' home? And why are you so flustered?
I apologize. There's a bit of trouble at the venue. I'll explain more when we meet.
Naturally, I was perplexed by my husband's words. What kind of trouble could it be? And it was the first time I'd seen him so agitated. Understood. Calm down. For now, I'll head to my parents' home as instructed.
Take a taxi. I'll be there soon too. See you.
With that, he hung up. Honestly, my mind was filled with question marks. But if Michael said so, there must be a valid reason. And so, driven by an unusual sense of urgency, I changed my destination from my in-laws' home to my own parents' home.
Olivia, what's going on? Isn't today Nancy's funeral?
Well, come on in for now. Let's talk inside.
Both my parents were surprised by my sudden return home. When I explained the situation, they exchanged puzzled glances, mirroring my own confusion. And without my husband's arrival, there was no way to explain everything. We waited nervously at my parents' house. About an hour later, my husband burst in.
Olivia. Are you okay?
I'm fine, but wait, what happened to your hand? I noticed bandages wrapped around his injured hand. His expression was deeply troubled as he touched the wounded area. Then he proceeded to explain the events related to my in-laws and the troubles that had unfolded at their home.
Actually,
It seems my husband has an older sister named Sophia. However, this Sophia was quite a rebellious child who caused trouble for the family since childhood. Apparently, she has been in and out of police custody countless times. Despite all this, Nancy, my mother-in-law, never abandoned her daughter and continued to apologize to those around her. Nancy even shouldered the debt Sophia had accumulated. Sophia promised to repay the debt, pleading with her mother. But then she broke that promise and left home. Sophia was estranged from my husband's family, and until today, they hadn't heard from her. Yet, on the occasion of Nancy's funeral, Sophia appeared at my husband's family home. Although time had passed, Sophia's behavior hadn't matured much. The words that came out of her mouth were shocking.
Mom's dead, right? How much inheritance will I get?
Understandably, my husband was furious. Was that really the first thing a daughter said upon her mother's passing? He then angrily informed Sophia that she had long been disinherited. And according to Nancy, her daughter was no longer Sophia, it was Olivia, me.
Huh? Olivia? Who's that woman? It's unthinkable that she can inherit while the actual daughter can't.
Sophia, upon learning this truth, turned red with rage. She snatched my husband's phone, hurled unsettling words at Michael and me, and drove away from the family home. My husband's injured hand was the result of her biting him during that confrontation.
I immediately remotely locked the phone, but I was concerned that information like the address and Olivia's face might still be accessible through the contacts or photos.
That's unexpected. Hearing my husband's explanation left me momentarily speechless. I had no idea that Nancy had another daughter, let alone one with such a troubled character.
I apologize for keeping my sister a secret. It's a family matter, and I never expected it to come to this.
My husband apologized in distress. We tried to console him while contemplating our next steps.
In that case, it might be best not to return to your home for a while, just in case.
Is our address here safe?
Yes, I haven't stored this address on my phone.
And so, as a precaution, we decided to stay at my parents' home for the time being. And as the night turned into day, the sun rose, and the chirping of birds filled the air. My husband prepared to leave for work.
I'm heading out. If anything happens, contact me on the spare phone.
Sure, take care. I watched him leave with a smile, but internally, anxiety gnawed at me. What if my sister-in-law barged in? What if she attacked us? These worries consumed my thoughts. Whenever I closed my eyes, Sophia's enraged face from the incident at my in-laws' home haunted me. Yet, life at my parents' house remained surprisingly peaceful. Days passed without any significant changes, and the tension that had plagued me gradually eased. Perhaps Sophia's intrusion would naturally fade away. That's the optimistic perspective I held. And then, things began to unfold. A police officer arrived at my parents' home from the nearby police station.
Excuse me. Are Mr. and Mrs. Smith here?
I felt a sense of unease and cautiously asked. What's this about? As it often happens with premonitions, my bad feeling turned out to be accurate. The officer explained that our home had been broken into by a burglar, and they had just received a report from the scene. I immediately contacted my husband and rushed home with him. Upon arriving, we discovered the interior of our house in disarray. Drawers were pulled open, and it looked as if a storm had swept through.
Were any valuables stolen?
Prompted by the officer, we conducted a thorough search of our home under their supervision. Thankfully, important items like passbooks appeared to be safe. However, several $100s in cash that we had kept in the dresser was missing. Interestingly, according to interviews with neighbors, they had seen a suspicious woman near our house over the past few days. Apparently, she had been shouting things like, "Come out," and "Give back the money," in front of our home. I turned to my husband. Michael, could it be?
Most likely, no. Almost certainly Sophia.
He nodded while looking into my eyes. We explained the recent altercation with my sister-in-law to the police, the disruption during my mother-in-law's funeral, the incident with my husband's stolen phone, and his injury. Fortunately, the police responded relatively swiftly, likely due to our prior report about the phone. Afterward, we were called back to the police station for further detailed questioning, and as the day began to fade, we finally returned to my parents' home. The burglar was swiftly apprehended. As it turns out, the culprit was indeed my sister-in-law, Sophia. According to the police, she had audaciously stayed at a hotel near the crime scene after the break-in. She was even casually receiving room service massages when they caught her. Of course, all those expenses were paid using the stolen money from our home. While she admitted to the crime itself, she denied any involvement in the burglary. The situation is more complex than a straightforward case of a family member committing a crime. Nevertheless, we found ourselves summoned to the police station once again. We were escorted to a room by an officer, and there sat a woman with flashy-colored hair, wearing a disgruntled expression. She spoke indignantly, addressing my husband.
Michael, seriously? It's unthinkable for a family member to do something like this.
Sophia showed no remorse whatsoever. It seemed she didn't even consider her actions wrong. Throughout the police interrogation, she maintained this attitude. According to her account, she hadn't broken into our home with the intention of burglary. She claimed to have come to discuss inheritance matters, but since we were never home, she resorted to breaking a window. As for the stolen cash, she insisted it was necessary for her stay at a nearby hotel. In other words, everything was our fault. Her reasoning felt hasty and self-centered. The realization that such a dangerous person held a grudge against me sent shivers down my spine. If I had encountered her alone, who knows what might have happened. Meanwhile, my husband Michael and my sister-in-law continued their heated exchange.
After years of absence, you suddenly show up and act like family? It's truly unbelievable. And give back my phone.
Fine. I'll return it. You locked it right away, so I couldn't use it properly. Just like you. Besides, family is family, right?
Both Mom and I cut ties with you long ago. So the inheritance has nothing to do with you.
Exactly. That woman, Mom, left the inheritance to a stranger like Olivia instead of her own daughter. Was she senile or something?
Don't you dare mock her. I couldn't tolerate Sophia belittling Nancy. Sophia glared at me and spoke with annoyance.
You're Olivia, right? The one who snatched the inheritance I was supposed to receive?
I didn't snatch anything. And I never. I mean,
Just what?
she leaned in, and embarrassingly, I faltered. The words I wanted to say got stuck in my throat. Sophia seemed to see through my hesitation and smirked triumphantly. At that moment, the police officer, who had been observing our interaction, cleared his throat and interrupted.
Everyone, calm down. For now, discuss this among yourselves as family.
He must have deemed it a family matter based on our conversation.
Regarding the complaint and other matters, we'll address those later.
With that, he defused the situation for the time being. And so, a few days later, we arranged a formal meeting at my in-laws' home. The guest room was filled with Nancy's relatives, gathered around a large table. Amidst the tense atmosphere, Sophia spoke first.
If you share the inheritance, I'll let bygones be bygones. You should be grateful to my generous heart.
Sophia's arrogance remained unchanged. Well, that was to be expected. A person who hadn't changed in over a decade wouldn't suddenly transform in a matter of days. She continued to insist,
Hand over the inheritance. Withdraw the complaint.
as if her sense of justice was unshakable. Of course, we had no intention of conceding to her demands.
I've said it repeatedly, but you've been disinherited. So you won't receive any of Mom's inheritance.
Fine. Then how about this? After you and Olivia get your share of the inheritance, just give me that amount.
Do you seriously think such a ridiculous idea would fly?
My husband's frustration was evident. I tried to calm him down and addressed Sophia with composure. Did you read Nancy's entire will? It mentioned you too, not just the inheritance.
I'm not interested in anything other than inheritance. It's probably just a bunch of grudges against me.
No, Nancy worried about you. She regretted things.
Well, that makes it even more reason for her to hand over the assets, doesn't it?
Sophia smirked, visibly displeased. My insides boiled with anger, and simultaneously, I felt an overwhelming sadness. She saw Nancy as nothing more than a convenient tool. Nancy didn't leave you any inheritance because she knew money wouldn't change you. I continued without waiting for her reaction. I won't give a single cent of Nancy's money to someone as despicable as you.
Well, look who's talking. And a stranger who isn't even blood related has the audacity.
I don't need to hear that from someone who disregarded family ties. Facing me directly, Sophia momentarily flinched. Then, her eyes sharpened, and she glared at me. It was an ugly, terrifying expression. But this time, I couldn't look away. There's nothing more to discuss. Now, please leave, I said, maintaining eye contact with the intimidating Sophia. Soon, she lunged across the table, attempting to grab me. In an instant, the relatives and my husband restrained her. 10 minutes later, the police officer who arrived dragged her away. Throughout, Sophia continued to curse, but by the time she was forced into the patrol car, her spirits had deflated, and her shoulders slumped. She was headed to jail. Our formal complaint had been officially accepted. According to reports, Sophia had accumulated substantial debt from loan sharks. Her excessive fixation on Nancy's inheritance likely stemmed from these hidden financial troubles. Regardless, Sophia is now destined for a miserable life, never to see the light of day again. There is no love like a mother's love, my husband muttered.
She brought this upon herself.
We sat in our tidied-up home, reflecting on the recent events. While gazing at Nancy's portrait, my husband spoke up.
By the way, Olivia, I was surprised by how boldly you stood up to Sophia.
Well, once I read Nancy's will. In truth, the day before our discussion with Sophia, I had carefully read Nancy's will. Until then, I hadn't had the chance to thoroughly review it. The will contained heartfelt sentiments, almost like a letter. Each word she wrote stirred something within me. Nancy had always cared deeply for her children. She left no grudges, only concern. And as she bravely departed for the heavens, she wished happiness upon us, her son and daughter-in-law. Perhaps she wanted to do more for her real daughter. Clutching the cardigan I was wearing, I tearfully remembered my mother-in-law. My husband tried to console me.
Olivia, could you knit something for me too?
Sure, I'd be happy to. I'll show you the knitting techniques that Nancy taught me. I wiped away the tears, smiling. I resolved to use her inheritance wisely and vowed to live a happy life in her memory.
How did you find this story? If you enjoyed it, please consider subscribing to our channel. Until next time.